I still remember that sunny afternoon our friendship began. James and I were inseparable. We grew up in the same neighborhood, went to the same schools, and shared the same dreams. In my eyes, he was the kind of friend every guy wishes for, loyal, funny, and always there when I needed him. But little did I know that same friend would someday become the reason for my deepest betrayal. The first sign of trouble came when I landed a new job at a tech startup. I was excited, and James was the first person I called to share the news. I remember him saying, "Man, this is your chance to prove your worth." I thought he would be proud of me. Instead, I could feel a subtle tone shift. It was as if he was never really happy for me. Work started off smoothly. I was learning so much and making a good impression on my bosses. The team was small but cohesive, filled with creative minds all driven to succeed. But soon I began to notice things that felt off. James would occasionally check in, asking vague questions about my projects. At first, I shrugged it off. Friends support each other, right? Then, everything changed when our company had a big presentation coming up. Everyone was working extra hours, and I was tasked with a critical part of the project. I spent nights preparing, pouring my heart into it. But the moment I stepped into that conference room ready to present, I felt an overwhelming sense of dread. Halfway through my presentation, I looked out into the audience, and there was James sitting there with a sly grin. My heart sank. That's when he whispered something to one of the higher-ups, and the entire atmosphere shifted. Suddenly, I stumbled on my words. It was as if I was losing control of my own narrative. I'll never forget the feeling of shame as the room erupted in laughter, not at my presentation but at me. After the presentation, I confronted James. "What did you say in there?" I demanded. He simply shrugged and said, "Just a little joke to lighten the mood. You took it too seriously." The betrayal cut deeper than I expected. I felt like I had been blindsided by someone I trusted. Days turned into weeks, and I found evidence that James had been feeding information about my work to others. He was sabotaging me. Each small attack felt like a punch to the gut, but nothing prepared me for what happened next. One evening, while scrolling through social media, I stumbled upon a post that shattered me. It was a photo of James having drinks with my boss, staring confidently at the camera. The caption read, "Excited for new opportunities." I felt a rush of anger surge through me. I would later learn that James leveraged my ideas, quickly getting promoted to a position I worked tirelessly for. The betrayal was horrendous. I felt humiliated, reduced to nothing in my own game. But at that moment, something inside me shifted. I decided I wouldn't keep taking punches. I needed a plan. It was time for revenge. I began observing James closely. I took notes of his routine and started gathering information about his projects. He was lazy, relying heavily on the hard work of others, throwing around charm as a distraction. After a few weeks, I had all the evidence I needed. I structured a dossier filled with proof of James's manipulation at work. I caught him taking credit for others' ideas and documented his sneaky tactics. With each piece of information, my confidence grew. I wasn't just hurt. I was determined to take back what was mine. But as I was laying the groundwork for my revenge, I needed to find the right ally. There was Mia, an incredible coworker who had also been affected by James's deceit. She had been passed over for promotions multiple times, and I knew she'd want to help bring James down. I approached her cautiously, sharing my plan. "What do you think?" I asked nervously. She smiled, a glint of mischief in her eyes. "I'm in, let's take him down." With Mia's expertise in the legal aspects of workplace conduct, we devised a plan that could expose James. We set up an anonymous tip-off to HR, attaching the evidence I gathered and leaving enough breadcrumbs for them to follow. I wanted to make sure he couldn't wiggle his way out. The waiting was agonizing. Days passed, and I could feel my heart race every time I saw James walk by, but nothing prepared me for what happened next. One afternoon, I overheard a heated conversation in the break room. James was at the center, arguing with my boss. "You can't do this to me, I built this project." His voice was laced with panic. I couldn't help but smile. He had no idea what was coming. HR had taken our tips seriously and started an investigation. Just a few days later, I received an email asking me to attend a meeting. My heart raced as I walked into the conference room and everything felt surreal. When I walked in, it was James sitting there, surrounded by HR representatives. The tension was palpable. I took a seat quietly, my heart pounding in my chest. During the meeting, James was confronted with the evidence that exposed his deceitful behavior. Watching him squirm was a thrill I hadn't anticipated. He tried to blame others, but the walls were closing in quickly. And then they revealed the final nail in his coffin, my evidence. It showcased everything he had done, and it felt like sweet justice. The satisfied expressions on the HR team's faces gave me a sense of empowerment I hadn't felt in months. James's face turned pale as they announced his termination. The betrayal that once broke me was now flipping the script. As he stormed out, I heard him mumble, "You'll regret this." I smiled, not out of spite, but because I regained the control he had stripped from me. I finally felt free. Weeks went by and my life started to heal. I learned invaluable lessons about trust and loyalty through this ordeal. I realized that sometimes the person you least expect can hurt you the most, but your greatest strength lies in how you respond to that pain. In the end, revenge didn't turn me into someone I wasn't. It empowered me, reflected the worth I had always carried within. I took what was a bitter chapter in my life and transformed it into a stepping stone for a brighter future. I wish James well, but one thing's for sure, loyalty isn't something I take lightly anymore. Trust is a privilege, and now I make sure I'm not just handing it out without thought. Sometimes the hardest lesson comes wrapped in betrayal. But in the end, we all deserve a second chance, even if it is just for ourselves.